know, Timothy, it's been a year since we met.
Okay, we got it. All set. Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Senate Transportation Committee. And it is Wednesday morning, and March 29th. The month is almost gone. Our first item on the agenda this morning is Mileage Smart Program. And Senator Berchlik, I'll let you lead off with it. Because, you know, all these folks. So go right ahead.
Yeah, we had brought up the Mileage Smart program, was discussed the other week when we were going over something else. So I thought that Mileage Smart was something that this committee had originally funded a couple of years ago. That it would be a good time to get an update from Capstone, who's running it.
Good.
And they're also, I also hoped while they were here to talk about the microtransit project, which I don't know if you're prepared to do that. But,
And who's on the screen with us this morning?
Samantha Hurt
Okay.
is the program manager for Mileage Smart. And my name is Paul Zabriskie. I'm the Weatherization and Climate Impact Director at Capstone Community Action. And Sam and I have been involved in the design of this program. Sam manages all of the day-to-day and is really the person who is closest to the consumers who are taking advantage of it, and brings a perspective that I can't be more theoretical and policy oriented about. She's prepared some slides, so I figured we sort of kick off with that. And Senator Berchlik, I'm happy to talk about Community Rise Vermont. I didn't prepare anything, but live and breathe it. So
yeah, we have some time on that. Just get a verbal update on where we are. That'd be great.
Sure. Sam, you there?
Yes, I'm here for the record. Samantha Hurt, Mileage Smart Program Manager. Thank you, Paul, for the intro. I just want to make sure you all can hear me and see the screen, and I can kind of see it in the background.
Listen, tell us a little bit about Mileage Smart, a little background.
And that would be helpful because the bill is, when it came over from the House, says creates it, but we've already got it. So,
So, okay, I'd be happy to do a quick overview. Sure. Mileage Smart was created by this committee as an effort. It was really a climate justice bill where we were providing incentives to folks to transition to electric vehicles, but the folks that we serve at Community Action aren't buying new vehicles, so they were really not able to participate in those resources to make that transition. So Mileage Smart was created. It assists income qualified Vermonters below 80% of state area median income to gain an incentive to access a car that gets better than 40 miles per gallon MPG or EMPG combined. Sam does daily tracking of what's the inventory of cars that are available. When people apply to our program, we've set it up so the experience of the consumer is sort of like online shopping, right? It is very much a web-based program where you apply online. Our system, when you hit submit, our system will email you back saying, we've got your stuff, we process it, we communicate back when somebody is approved, qualified for the program. And then there's an exchange that goes on as the consumer goes out, identifies the vehicle they want, works with the dealer. The incentive is actually paid through the dealer, so it doesn't become taxable income to the recipient. And they get a quality used car. So that's sort of the big picture of how this is. What VTrans did was try and move this out of session law and into codified law.
That's what they want. They want to codify.
So it has, we've been operating under a contract that's now must be in 4th year. And it is.
Yeah, I think it was 20, it was one Senator Ash was on the committee.
Mhm.
We talked about like, the cost of buying a used Prius compared to buying a new electric car, and how you could give benefit to those people going from a vehicle that gets 20 miles a gallon to 45 miles a gallon, and that those vehicles were out there and available with that.
Well, the other part was, and she was no longer with Capstone, but had done a lot in
Eileen,
Eileen. And she was just saying that, lower income households, they buy used cars. That's where so it was an attempt to direct assistance to, they weren't buying the vehicles. They don't have the capacity or the financing to do it, so.
Racing used cars have been so high too, that's just been a factor, I imagine.
we'll talk about that a little
Yeah, I have, that's what I hear.
Sam, I hope I didn't steal your thunder.
No, you certainly did not. You just addressed our first slide. So as Paul said, it is a nice and easy process for most. You apply, find a vehicle. If you need a loan, you get approved for a loan. And then at that point, we issue our commitment letter, which just promises the dealer that we will release the money and the client is able to drive away with the vehicle. So at the bottom, you'll see the requirements that we have for individual qualification and vehicle qualification. And yeah, I mean, Paul did a good job covering this. So
Sam?
Oh, I was just wondering the number
yes.
of people who have actually had the benefit.
507, it says on the second slide.
I can hardly like.
I hardly believe you didn't see that.
I don't have a slide.
Oh, shoot, here.
You'll have to wait.
Well, you have to, there it is, right there. Top line.
Sam, I had a question on the prior slide and why you use the JD Power clean retail value and not Kelley Blue Book, or if there's other.
Or NIDA.
NADA was purchased by JD Power.
Oh.
So it is NADA. And
Yes. So we use JD Power Clean Retail Value because they really track the market and they use a regional, they track it on a regional basis. And this is what most dealerships use. You can go into the dealership and show them a KBB value, but what they're really looking at is the JD Power value. And we find that it does a really good job of accurately showing what we're seeing in the market. And since COVID, they've begun adjusting their values on a more frequent basis since the market has been more volatile. And these are values that we trust. And, if a dealer is trying to sell a vehicle to one of our clients at a higher value, it helps give us negotiating power. And when the customer goes into the dealership, they can say, hey, we can't move forward with this deal until you bring the price down. And it's actually been pretty helpful. I think most of the time when we show them that their car needs to be priced lower, they agree to do so.
Right.
The JD Power tool that we subscribe to is the same one that dealers use. They also do appraisals on that same tool. So we're all working with the same piece of information. Capping it at clean retail sort of says this is the limit. We're not going to allow this program to be inflationary or otherwise taken advantage of if we can help it. We also cap the interest rate at 12%. And we find a remarkable number of people who come to us with a deal that's at 18%. We said, sorry, 12% is our limit. And somehow they managed to get it to 12%. We're lower. And we really urge people to work with banks and credit unions and seek financing independent of their car shopping experience, because we consistently see people get percentage rates lower by going through that extra effort. So we don't do a lot of coaching other than people communicating with Sam and Sam sort of helping them with the program. We do have some resources and links on our website that people can access, but it is a relatively administratively light program in that regard.
I like that. Taking the program and putting it in statute, did they make any changes? Did you testify in the House? In other words, what we have here in the House passed version, did they change any of the parameters of the program or?
No, we're good with the parameters. We are working with VTrans to make some adjustments and sort of how it rolls out, but those are sort of all below
That's a more
the level of,
administrative thing.
so no, we're fine with the changes now.
Yes.
Go ahead, Sam.
Go ahead, next slide. We're at the 507, is that up for 1 year, 10 years?
That is lifetime to date.
Okay, how many years?
Well, we're in our third year, so we'll have a slide a little later, but 2 full years and the first quarter of this year is really how far that's gone, and nominally $2 million to Canadian incentives to $200,000 for that at this point.
Okay. Okay, what's on that one?
Sam,
Yes. So, correct. 507 Vermonters have utilized the incentive with over 2 million invested. And so obviously this program, one of its goals is to help people transition to more environmentally friendly transportation. And so we track the types of vehicles that are purchased. With our 40 combined MPG requirement, that means that there are hybrids, just conventional hybrids that are eligible. And in this market, we're seeing right now more folks are able to purchase hybrids at a lower price. So as you can see the pie chart, this is the breakdown of the types of vehicles that folks are purchasing. And I will say that over the past 3 years, we are seeing a slight increase in EV and plug-in hybrid purchases. And when I say slight, I do mean slight. But obviously our goal is to continue to help people transition to a hybrid, and then from a hybrid to a plug-in hybrid, and then to an all-electric vehicle. And in doing this research, I looked at what were people driving beforehand. So we have there's a database that whenever someone gets their car inspected, the inspection reports plugged in online. And so every time someone purchases a car and trades in a vehicle, I look up that traded vehicle. And through some tedious Excel work, I looked at what's their average miles traveled every year, and transitioning from their ICE vehicle to the hybrid or EV, I was able to calculate that on average, folks are saving about $530 per year. And I mean, for folks that are using our program, this can be absolutely huge. You know, they're able to save that money up to take care of their kids, to do a little bit extra for their family at the end of the year, use it how they like, and it's very impactful on an individual basis. I'll pause here if anyone has questions, or if Paul, you want to add anything.
How do you get the $530 a year saving? Is that you take an average price of gasoline or something? Or?
Yeah, so I use average price of gasoline, and then there's a calculation that you can use to it basically shows, based on your zip code, if you're driving a plug-in hybrid or an EV, what you're spending to drive that vehicle. So taking an average price of gasoline and comparing that to what they're now spending on their EV, that would be the savings.
Does it apply to diesel or not diesel? Just gasoline?
I did not use diesel in this equation, no.
I don't believe that we've
You probably don't.
delivered any diesel vehicles through the program after Volkswagen was
Mostly trucks.
adjusted. They no longer meet the criteria through the TDI.
And you haven't had anybody trade in like an old
Well,
truck.
we probably have. What we're pulling is an MPG. So we, when you trade in your vehicle, we capture the VIN off of the bill of sale and then run it through ABIP to capture what are the prior history of that vehicle, what were the driving habits, how many miles per year are you driving? We then take the EPA rated mileage for the traded in vehicle, apply it to the mileage driven to get a prehistory, and then we take that same number of miles and apply it to the MPG of the new vehicle to get a projected new. So, and then applying the price of gas the same on both gives you miles per year. So about, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, about a third of the vehicles that come through the program come with enough data to do this exercise. So we're not presenting it as if it's a statistically valid study, right? It is simply a bit of research and algebra on the vehicles that we know we're handling and the consumers that we're serving. So it is an average, but when we did this, it was quite an eye-opening thing that you know, $500 a year is a big deal. So that's the methodology and the history behind that.
Okay,
Sam?
okay, that's next one, inventory.
So when I started working as the Mileage Smart program manager, I was looking up, I was helping customers search for vehicles. And something that I started to do was create a list, and I would post it online and email it to all of our folks who have had their application approved. And I went through all of the dealers' websites online that I could find. And the list included every eligible vehicle. And from these lists, I looked at what are the price points? What kind of inventory are we looking at? And when I started this in January of 2021, more vehicles were below $15,000. And I'm using the $15,000 mark because most folks that come through our program, when you're talking with them about, you know, what kind of car do you want? What's your max amount that you're willing to spend? $15,000 is typically that number, give or take a couple thousand. And so at the time, you know, when folks were looking at these lists, they thought, you know, I can work with this. I can find something that's going to meet my needs. But over the past 2 years, we have seen a real change. And you can clearly see that in this chart. The vehicles that are below 15,000 are either slim to none. And of those, because of the market shift, if it's below 15,000, it's going to have significantly more miles. It's not going to be as reliable as the type of vehicle you would have been looking at in January of 2021. So this is what we're working with right now. I'm continuing to track this. Obviously, you know, we don't have too much of an influence of what's happening outside of just really helping our clients make sure that they're vetting the vehicles that they're finding. And I try to do my due diligence with that and just scour the internet to find those gems in the rough that are a lower price, but they have a really good history. You know, I work with dealers because of this change. Dealers are now more willing to, you know, go to auction with Mileage Smart in mind. I've had several conversations with them just talking about this issue, and now they're going to auctions looking for a $10,000 Toyota Prius that's from the South, has no rust issues, has low miles, and they're willing to move it onto their lot for our Mileage Smart folks. So, you know, there are things that we're doing to address this, but this is what we're working with right now.
New cars were such short supply, manufacturers couldn't build them fast enough. So the used vehicles went sky high in price. Wow, I couldn't believe some of the prices you look at.
Look at the graph.
Yeah.
See.
right
Well,
there.
I think there's two factors. There's sort of the macro factor that used cars went wildly out of sight. That's starting to adjust
Yes, I heard that.
across all markets.
Yeah.
It's not adjusting for us. And the reason is the 40 MPG, right? The increase in
Yeah,
fuel
yeah.
prices
That's a tough.
in that time frame as well made high efficiency vehicles more valuable relative to all cars. And we're not seeing that price drop in the used car 40 MPG and up market that we're seeing in all other vehicles.
Used Teslas dropped 20%. Saw a headline on it yesterday.
Yeah.
Used Model 3s, probably still about 50.
Oh, yeah.
What's the failure rate? Was there a lot of repossessions, or you account for that? People that couldn't, once they get into it, couldn't pay, or?
We don't have the means to track that. I mean, we could probably,
Financial responsible for it once they leave your
yes,
shop.
the deal is between the
Okay.
dealer and the
Okay.
bank.
Yeah.
And we're a contributor at the time of sale. We do after the fact communications just in terms of evaluation, but we don't have any record that would track.
But that's why it was so critical at the time of purchase to make sure the interest rate was reasonable and they had the capacity to make the
Yeah.
payments. And that was part of the testimony we got.
And that they're dealing with an institution who goes through their process to make sure that they're worthy for a loan.
Because you're only dealing with dealers. They can't do a private sale.
That is correct. There's just too many variables to do this through private sale. What we do help people buy down underwater loans. So in many situations, I would say many, it's not uncommon that we're helping somebody get out of a situation where they're underwater. And so when they are getting into this new vehicle, to them, they're doing so with an equity stake in it. They're not behind the eight ball right off the bat. And that's an enormous problem. When Capstone does budget counseling for the constituents we serve, we see underwater car loans that are just debilitating. So that's one of the benefits of the program.
I hope that former Senator Ash is listening.
Yeah.
Because obviously we're
I actually,
Back down memory
I
lane.
have talked with former Senator Ash several times, and fill him in whenever I see him.
Oh, that's good.
That he is aware.
I'm sure he is. He's probably gonna text somebody right.
Okay, Sam.
All right. So since January 2021, we've significantly increased operations with various outreach, social media, working with our connections through CAPS and other related organizations. Namely, though, what has really helped us is our connection with dealerships. Right now, I actually think that number may be a little higher, might be like 81 dealerships. But we connected with them through, cold calling. We worked with the VADA to have information sent out. And so these are dealerships that regularly, they work with us, they know about the program, and the biggest help that they are is when they see someone come in to their floor who, they think might be eligible for this program, they tell them about Mileage Smart. And a significant amount of deals that come through are from these salespeople. They'll send an application and they'll shoot me a message and say, hey, I have someone sitting in a chair in front of me. They just sent an application. Can you take a look at it? And then, most of the time we're able to get the deal done that day.
So the dealerships, I don't know how many dealerships we have? 78, it's a lot. Geographically, are we pretty well covering the entire state?
Next slide.
Oh.
There's some challenges.
Well, I know that you have relationships with the other capture, the lead, on the program, but, I was just wondering, obviously, that's big concern is, that there's some access around the state.
Yeah, I think the greatest challenge around dealerships is really how they view this customer base. And we are received incredibly well in some places, and in some places, not so much. Anyway, so there's a lot of sort of predispositions to programs in general that I think affect how a group does. But generally, if a sales manager is on board, they're willing to talk about it and help people through the process. And
I was just wondering, so the next slide tells you where the dealerships are around the state.
I think
Plus, I'm sure the dealers would like to get more money for some of these cars, but
you're showing where the sales went.
Sam, you want to go on to the next one?
Sure. So this is all of our Vermonters who have utilized the incentive, and this is as of, I believe, January of this year. And
Essex County, right? Right.
Yeah, there's one dealership that's Brighton.
That's it.
Yeah.
I don't think
But
there's anything.
again, you gotta be realistic about where the people are too. When you look at that whole area where there's not a dot, there isn't 3,000 people.
yeah.
No, I know.
And
And there-
It's just, you don't have the concentration.
No, I know, that's what I was saying, I think if there's only one,
Right.
in a relatively small.
Can we get
dealership.
roads up there?
Well, I would wait for power. Let's get power first.
I remember when Granby Victory didn't have power.
Yeah,
And they had
yeah.
Victory in the Hills,
Gee,
and that was late 60s, the early 60s that they were.
You must have been 3.
Rich.
So Brighton are they a franchise?
They were a Chevy franchise, now they're a used,
Island Pond.
dealership. Yeah, Island Pond, yeah.
Island Pond's a village in the town of Brighton.
Okay, well, we can reach out to them with a specific
I'm not surprised,
communication.
I don't know,
They sell a fair amount of used vehicles. They've been there, they've been in, the
Vincent's.
Goulet family, they've been in business for a long
Which one you
time.
work for us?
I worked for North Point, which is now one of Abel's dealerships, and it was Molten Corporation before. And we helped transfer it to them, and then Bark Motor Company, which is no longer in business.
So I think the evolution we're seeing in the program, more and more EVs coming to market. So we're, we do see clients of Mileage Smart buying, used Leafs, used Bolts, Neros. Where, more and more, we're going to be seeing the all-wheel drive EVs entering that market. And one of the challenges in the more remote parts of the state is that there's, like, Subarus don't qualify for this program because the four-wheel drive undercarriage is just heavy enough that they don't, or at least the model years that are available to our constituents aren't getting 40 miles per gallon. So I think four-wheel drive is a big deal in many parts of the state, and that we will see a little better utilization in very rural areas as the market evolves and we move more and more towards EVs being a larger percentage of the program and all-wheel drive EVs being a component of that.
And a question for Sam, how many, when you say you post, the available vehicles and have that graph on the percentage of the cost on around 15,000, what is the number of vehicles that you're posting? Like, what would be your inventory that you're saying? Obviously, there might be other ones you're not posting, but do you have a number for what would be like the weekly?
What you could put in your shopping cart.
Or does, when people go and say like, what vehicles are out there that would be eligible? Are they looking at 2 cars or 20?
Sure. So I would say on average, it's about 90 to 100. And,
That's
you know,
A lot of them are over 15, right?
so I will also just say that we have this inventory available because we have quite a few dealerships working in this state that have sister locations in other states. And they have been willing to ship vehicles from out of state to their in-state dealership. And I do just want to mention them. I mean, namely Berlin City Kia, like they're one of our best dealerships. And they have done an incredible job working with our clients and making sure that if they want something that's on an out-of-state lot, they'll get it. They'll get it into Vermont for them. So when I'm making that list, I include those out-of-state dealerships, knowing that our clients are able to look at them if they want to.
I need a shout out to Freedom Nissan as well.
Yes.
In terms of dealers that have really made the effort to create accessibility for their low-income consumers and made an effort to inventory vehicles that provide good value through this program.
The range of belief is still some of these uses are still fairly limited then.
Yeah, it's what's your application becomes a really important piece of that selection with the used EV market.
I didn't realize it was so popular. It's been a popular program.
And then on the graph on slide 5 of the applications received quarterly, those are, how many are approved or how many go through? Maybe you said that earlier, Sam. I can't remember.
I did not say that earlier. I would say about 75 to 80%. The majority of folks who are not approved, it's because their income is too high. So right now we have about 1,200 folks who their application is approved, but they're waiting to find a vehicle.
I don't have my median income. Well, I guess that's the Fred.
What, 80%?
Yeah, what is 80%? It's I assume it's by family size.
Yeah.
Yes. So right now for a one person, it's about 52,000 and it goes up incrementally about, I want to say $6,000. I don't have that chart in front of me.
Do they have to trade in a car or no, they can get one outright?
No, there's a,
Replace your ride, they do.
Yeah.
yes.
That's the program
Correct.
requires you
That's
to turn it in.
Oh,
Yeah, and they can stack our incentive on top of other incentives if they're eligible for
there's
them.
some people that sell their car themselves.
Well, I think that's why we only get a third of the vehicles that have trade-ins where we can track down the vehicles because they're
They get the market price on theirs.
yeah. They understand what the dealers
Yeah.
program is.
Interesting.
And you, Sam, what is the current budget situation of the program?
So we have used about 2 million of perhaps Michelle can. We project that we're good in the near term for this year.
Yeah, there's actually, I want to say, I think between the allocation that came last year and what we had previous to that, because things were slow during COVID, I feel like we might be between 2.5 and 3 million. Does that sound about right to
Sounds
you?
about right.
Yeah,
Total or left?
total available left. Yeah, so we're in good shape, I think, and
Yep.
you know, now that things are picking up, now that EV sales, the new market are picking up, we're gonna have a lot of used hybrids, I think, coming back, as Paul mentioned, so I think we're in pretty good shape.
So there's no ask either in the House bill or from the administration for more money for mileage?
Not at this point, because we have the buffer and we plan for kind of a 3-year expenditure for many of the EV incentive programs, so I think we're in good shape that way.
Tesla's will be opening their store pretty soon. I'm sure they get their.
Hopefully, it's taking them long enough.
What's that?
It's taking them long enough.
I don't think started yet. They,
In Burlington?
yeah.
South Burlington.
That's not even, got
You know
it.
that? Yeah. Oh,
City council gave the permit.
Sitting there vacant.
I thought they were ready to go when they got their permit and everything.
I gotta call that guy.
I've talked to them and they
Okay.
said that end of this year was sort of their goal,
Okay, I didn't know what they're
this
going.
calendar year. But it doesn't feel like that's.
We fast tracked that thing for them.
I know, yeah.
Frustrating.
You mean the city council?
Wasn't really a fast track. We didn't do that.
That city council held
You
everything.
just work faster.
Anything else?
I don't have anything on that, but if we have the time, I'd like to hear all about their microtransit program that
Okay, go ahead. Go.
Okay, so quick overview. Capstone did a needs assessment process a number of years ago and recognized that transportation is among the biggest barriers to moving people out of poverty. After stable housing, transportation, I've probably said it in this room before that rural Wisconsin study showed that the access to a vehicle and a driver's license was a better indicator of your ability to get off public assistance than a high school diploma. It matters. And so we set out to try and identify a cost-effective way of helping people in rural communities in our region get where they needed to go, get to the doctor, get kids to daycare so they can get to work. We put together a plan for a fleet of electric vehicles that would serve in this market and be sort of a hybrid type of organization that had a foundation in the social service rides that we're already doing every day in Vermont, and layering that with some market-based services, kind of a rural Uber, so that we were creating accessibility for everybody. We moved forward with that program. We worked with V-Trans and Green Mountain Transit. We signed a contract with them at the beginning of the year, and we have 2 Ionics on their way to us today. We have 1 Tesla in-house. We have another one on the way, and we look to be driving elderly and disabled and non-emergency medical rides by the end of April. That contract also has a provision for mobility for all, and I'm not the best person to describe what mobility for all can do, but it is sort of grown out of the E&D funding and provides greater flexibility to operate a little farther afield in more hours of the week, longer days, weekends, really trying to address the needs that go beyond sort of the typical medical appointments to the issues that create isolation and really impact mental health, which impacts physical health in rural Vermont.
are you gonna use volunteer drivers for the E&D?
We are not. We're using paid drivers. There's been an enormous challenge getting volunteer drivers. That's not just a Vermont thing, that's a New England and beyond issue. But for every mile we drive, we decarbonize the state's transportation budgets. Those are miles that were previously being done with sometimes gas cars, sometimes diesel buses, that are now being provided with clean electric transportation. Chris Cole is our executive director. Sue Minter, my boss, is the president of the board of Community Rise Vermont. Capstone
I
had
created a separate.
Capstone had to create a separate entity because Capstone could not absorb the type of liability that a transportation provider has into an organization with 180 employees, many of whom had
So
started.
who does provide the liability? GMT?
No, we insure, and we track Cillian flow down provisions that come through GMT. So we're a contractor to GMT. Our contract is at an hourly rate that is lower than their hourly rate to provide the same service.
So, but you said you had to create this separate entity because Capstone couldn't accommodate the liability. So I was just wondering, how did you, this new entity has the liability rests with that new entity? I'm just wondering.
Yes.
That comment with what got created, so.
So, okay, the reason has to do with workers' comp and 170 employees who have very proud of the discount we get when we buy workers' comp. And the risks associated with transportation jeopardize discounts that affect Head Start, weatherization, our community services and economic development programs. So it necessitated creating a separate entity, and it has its own board. It has its own executive director. The staff of Capstone who have been bringing this program forward, Amanda Carlson and Laura Brooke, are both transitioning. So they'll become employees of Community Rise Vermont at the end of the month, 2 or 3 days. That new service will be called Gopher. So you see Gopher it, that's our.
I thought it was like gopher as in wood chop.
Well, maybe a little bit of that. We are in rural Vermont. Anyway, so we are excited to be launching it, and it's been a long haul, and we are trying to be relatively conservative in how we go about our business and finance. We said we're launching with some contracts that make sure that every ride we give, every mile we drive is paid for. We've raised a lot of money and continue to seek philanthropic support and investment to expand the program into those workforce rides, into partnerships with other organizations like the hospital, Washington County Mental Health, the partner organizations that are working directly with clients who need to get where they need to go. And we're working to create portals so that those entities can be engaged in sort of arranging for that transportation, dealing with some of the technical challenges. Again, we're aiming for a service that looks a lot like online shopping. And we're doing that with a clientele that aren't necessarily online shoppers yet. So there's a bunch of challenges there that we're going to be on a steep learning curve, but we're really excited about where it's at.
And when do you think the rural Uber part will be started?
I think towards the end of this year. I think, our goal is to crawl before we walk, before we run. And that is clearly the most challenging market to be in. I think that we feel, we're a mission-driven nonprofit. Our goal to engage in sort of a subscription service with employers and make sure that we're getting people to work is a higher priority than getting people home from a restaurant or other service. Clearly the carbon savings of this program come when we have a critical mass that allows a 2-car household to feel okay about becoming a 1-car household. And when my wife and I feel like we can still get down and have the spontaneity that we enjoy in a 2-car household with only one vehicle.
Get your electric bike, get the percentage.
There you go. Well, I think it is, all of these are part of the solution, but for us, having a service that is robust enough, reliable enough, respected enough to allow people to make that commitment, that's where we really see the reduction in vehicle miles traveled, the reduction in carbon dioxide from the transportation sector.
So taking this and putting it against the Wisconsin study that showed that, in fact, the connection between poverty and having a license and a vehicle, would you see what you're proposing would be a sort of a different strategy to address that transportation need? In other words, would you see households that might not even have to have a vehicle? Or is the goal still to create that level of independence? And I mean, going from 2 to 1, you still have a lot of latitude.
Yeah.
1 to nothing, you really are much more limited. So
And our mission is first comes the house with nothing, right? The disabled who can't drive, the rural isolated who are, my mom, just 91, she's fit as a fiddle, but really shouldn't be behind it. Making sure that she can get where she needs to go and wants to go. I think, there will always be a piece of our society, at least in my horizons, that will need support to get where they need to go. Right? We have taken our approach to transportation is we provide the roads, you provide the vehicle, and there's folks that just doesn't work for, hasn't worked for, and so we're working with VTrans to, how do we evolve our concept of transit to support people who live outside of the boundaries that the current model just doesn't address. Right?
What is your diameter, like, some service are fit around there? I'm assuming you have one, but maybe.
It's not round because of the way the roads work.
But is it like a time or distance miles?
I'm not the person to answer that question. So
I'm assuming you started with it.
Yes, we are starting with sort of perimeters. We have talked with Green Mountain Transit about helping them when they expand their Montpelier microtransit model to Barrie, and they're looking for more operators and vehicles that can operate at a lower cost and get the job done with fewer seats. So instead of driving cutaway buses with 1 or 2 people on them, we're driving electric vehicles, and it's really a sedan service that links up with the fixed route system. So our goal is not to disrupt the existing model, it's to complement it and bring more people into the existing transit paradigm.
And can I ask Michelle? Michelle, are we, the money through the agency to GMT to, what do we call it? Community rights?
Gopher.
The Gopher program. That's part of the what we call the MIT, MTI program? And is it seen as a pilot, like as a?
or is it part of public transit?
It's part of public transit, not the special MTI effort. And it's seen as a pilot to figure out how do we, as Paul pointed out, complement those efforts that we already have in place. We're sort of innovating into microtransit now, which is unfortunately with COVID been a little bumpy, but we have a lot of microtransit studies to prepare to do pilots out there. We, continue our discussions with AHS on how to best provide graded services so that we make sure that we don't have duplicative services, that we have like the right size and availability of vehicles, drivers, people to facilitate the activities we need, and to continue to expand. I think we've had this long-term vision of how do we fill those extra seats that we have when we go to do a Medicaid ride or an E&D ride, and we have, we could have brought along 2 or 3 other people, or 2 other people probably.
We're all basketball too.
Yeah, right. So we're very excited to sort of understand and see like what this reveals for us. And I think that the model capstone is approaching in terms of leveraging the public investments that are available, but recognizing that with workforce needs, there's a lot of private funds out there that employers might be able to bring to the table, or other agencies who, like you said, need their people to get a ride who may or may not qualify, whether it's colleges, universities. There's just, I think, a whole myriad of opportunity that we're still understanding. Myriad. I don't know, Paul, other thoughts on to anything to add to sort of what I've shared?
No, I think we're on a really steep learning curve. As we've looked at software solutions, this business, first and foremost, it's a trust business, but the product is really the people we're trying to get rides for. You have to be operationally competent in delivering rides, but it's really about IT. It's really about the technology that helps you manage multiple different dashboards within a database so that the consumer can understand what can they do for me, and the driver understands what am I doing next, and that the software is pulling together the highest level of efficiency in all of these pieces. And that's really, we're on a really steep learning curve, and state is rolling out a new product, Q-Ride. We're very eager to have an incident of it and be able to work with that and understand how to effectively integrate with the rest of the system, and also how to push it to new boundaries that
Q-Ride?
Q-Ride is a software product.
Yeah, it's just
Oh, I was
the
gonna
name.
say that's, okay. I was
It is
gonna say,
a dispatch.
another
When
program?
did we fund that?
Oh,
Well, so this is an incredibly dynamic marketplace, and the great news from my perspective is that we can get the emissions out. We all the technologies are there. It's really about the sophistication of deploying them effectively, and that I'm really excited to be involved with people who want to do this every day and have their head in it, and are coming from a place of compassion for a community that is really underserved. So,
Okay, I think that covers it well. Thank you very much. Great job, both of you, and explained a lot of, we talk about clean air, but we got good air in Vermont. We're doing a lot of good stuff. A lot of these programs you don't really know about, you don't hear a lot about them, but there's certainly helping the clean air that we have. Okay, thank you.